In America, you can profit off of pretty much anything, including throwing people off of their health insurance. Last year, President Biden signed legislation ending the pandemic-era requirement that states maintain Medicaid coverage for all beneficiaries, allowing states to start cutting millions of people from their rolls, which could result in up to 17 to 24 million people losing their coverage. Now meet Maximus, a federal contractor involved in privatizing government services, including Medicaid eligibility reviews. So far, more than 70% of those who have recently lost Medicaid coverage were terminated not because of ineligibility, but because of administrative reasons, such as not answering a piece of mail fast enough or having a call dropped when speaking with a redetermination specialist. Because here's the thing, based on their contracts, Maximus and other contractors involved in redeterminations have financial incentives to make Medicaid more bureaucratic, harder to enroll, and easier to get kicked off. And wouldn't you know it, Maximus has increased its earning estimate by $100 million, its share price has risen nearly 50%, and its CEO
Maximus was given certification to approve doctors' credentials and programs they operate for the government. So it's basically like a ISO, like an International Standards Organization certification. But now Maximus can say, okay, Doctor so and so, you wanna work for us? We need you in this program, but we're gonna need you to do certain things for us while you're working on this program to maintain your employment,
So they're all controlled. Yeah.
I don't know if you heard the audio that I posted. This is taking me a long time, but I knew her before my Twitter account was purged. One of the many times my Twitter account's been purged. She's a former Veterans Enrollment Services employee, okay? Maximus bought out that company, VES. That was like a $1.4 billion buyout, right? So anyway, Maximus is also...
Is this a state system that takes care of veterans after they return home kind of thing? Yeah, cool.
Yeah, or even while they're, I guess, maybe even while they're in the military, yeah. So, and as you've seen, like, the systems they implement here are usually, eventually end up in the other countries, right? So, so she's, I can't put her at risk and, divulge her name or anything like that, but she sent me an audio file from a customer service module she had to complete, So I know 100% without question, Maximus is aiding the Taliban in trafficking children. I mean, the audio...
Trafficking children in Afghanistan, in a war-torn country, which has been created. Isn't that horrific?
Yeah. And the guy was very... you could hear the nervousness in his voice,
I bet.
Talking about, the terminology they should be using when they discuss these things. I'm like, my God, you people are evil. Yeah. You'll change the nomenclature, you'll change your word to facilitate and to ultimately rationalize what you're doing.
Wow.
Yeah, so I just like for everybody to listen to that audio, just to hear that, it's subtle and you might not pick up on it at first, but as soon as I heard it, I was like, that just confirms everything that further confirms everything that I knew about Maximus, from like the Clinton Foundation, to the stuff happening in Australia, to the, in the UK, whatever country they're in, it's in many ways, it's legalized child trafficking, but in an equal amount, it's straight up child trafficking, like corporate child trafficking.
And we're funding it. Taxpayers are funding these corporations to do this. And we're funding the military to do this as well. It's so sad how corrupt these state systems have become. And yeah, thank you for pointing out, like, this is so international. These networks, these child trafficking networks, they don't have borders. This is an international operation being run from the highest of levels.
All right. Hello, friends and family. This is Trey. I was asked to do a commentary on a company called Maximus Inc. Why is Maximus Inc. so important to us? Well, this is the source of all your pain right here, these people, in various different ways. So, if you have a child support case, if you have a family court case, a guardian ad litem involved, if you have any sort of social service providers involved in a court case, you want to listen to this. So Maximus Inc. is a huge multi-billion-dollar corporation that earns its profits from intervention of families, in a nutshell. Now, the reason this is so important to you to understand is because this corporation, yes, it is a private corporation, but they are procured in contract by your government officials, okay? So a lot of misconception is out there based on what is private and what is government, and, you know, if they're private, there's no connection, and don't listen to them. And I'm here to tell you right now that if anyone's guiding you to do such a thing, hit the brakes. Hit the brakes, because you're going to get arrested. So I'm going to explain to all of you how these corporations work. So at this time, I realize most people are feeling desperate and in a pinch, but acting on impulse is not going to help you. Okay, so it's going to take a little know-how, it's going to take a little elbow grease, it's going to take a little learning time, so that you can provide yourself with the best possible defense and not put yourself in a predicament that actually causes further harm. And you're going to learn why that is today. So I'm going to just do a very general overview of who this company is, what they do, how they link into your family life, and why it is very, very important that you do not demonstrate belligerence, that you do not demonstrate your inability to discern with what the law says. Because the more you do that, the more likely it is that you will have yourselves in the clutches and the grips of this company without really understanding how it works. A lot of times we are led in desperation to try new things based on basically what others are telling us to do. It's not a good idea, my lovelies. It's not a good idea. So please hit the brakes, take some time. I'm going to give you guys a lot of intel on what goes on behind the scenes so that you can better empower yourself to defeat this thing. Okay, so this is super important. If you don't understand trust law, if you don't understand contract law, if you are not familiar with the fact that the courts are general provisional customs courts and don't know what that means, then please stop whatever it is you're doing and just take a couple of weeks to learn a little bit more so that you can empower yourselves to make a very fully informed decision on your next move. I don't like seeing children being removed from their families. This is really what got me into studying all this, okay? So I do not have a CPS case. I have never had involvement with CPS in my life. However, I did have a family court case and a GAL that led me to realize something was horribly wrong. When I realized that, I started hearing from families about CPS, and that was very disturbing. So what I did is I grabbed some cases and I dug in and I learned about the Child Support Enforcement Agency and what they're really doing behind the scenes that no one else has ever explained. I don't know if others don't know this, haven't caught it, or whatever the case may be, but hit the brakes for now. This is going to be just a general overview to get you to understand how things work behind the scenes. I will continue to do videos to demonstrate for you how I found what I found and what it means to you and how you can use it. There are solutions, yes. So right now, you're going to have to be patient while you learn these things in order to help you. Unfortunately, there's no magic bullet, okay, friends? There is no magic bullet. So most of you will refer to me by Jack, and the reason is because Jack has actually been looking at Maximus for quite some time. I have not found Maximus yet, but have been looking for them for quite some time, so it came together brilliantly and beautifully. And the reason is because my research has led me down the road to child support enforcement as being what is called a financial advisory firm. Yes, financial advisory firm. With financial advisory firms, you must have a financial advisor, hence the terms guardians. Okay, this is something that you're going to learn more into, but I hope it has your attention enough so that you can learn a little bit more about this company, what they do, and how we can address it. Okay, so this particular company started up, of course, in Virginia, right? They are huge, all right? They are all over the world, and what they really are trying to do here is business acquisitions. So by gobbling up all things related to Medicaid and Medicare services and anything that links to them, they are basically in pursuit of a monopoly here. So anything related to child support for children in general and their rights comes back to this particular company. Okay, so that's why we should all be interested And we should all be putting the spotlight on this particular company. Now, I am not recommending that anybody in learning this right now starts the process of going after them. And here's why. When you make bad decisions and you pull these people out into the open, they're going to get combative. They're going to start blocking us from remedy, right? So take the time to learn a little bit first before you do it. There are going to be some people out there, I know they're really well versed and really well studied, that might actually, this might spark some ideas for you. But, again, before we make that big move, I would hope that maybe we can put our heads together. You can't know everything. I don't know everything. You don't know everything. So maybe together we can create a monster suit and see if we can't figure out how to make things move faster. Again, I'm only one person. So hopefully when you guys hear this information, it will spark some, innovation here. But let's go over Maximus. So this particular article is one of many. Maximus also is a stockholding company in trust. Their stock currently sells at $76 per share, which tells you just how successful this company is. Okay, so now, as I was telling you, they accumulate all the other little companies out there that have everything and anything to do with Medicaid billing, right? So they have organizations that are typically nonprofits. These are called solicitors. These solicitors are charged with the duty of finding professionals that work in the field of social service and medicine that they can utilize for Medicaid care towards children and families, right? So these solicitors procure all these different professionals in a network, just like Blue Cross and Blue Shield. So they ask these providers if they would be willing to provide services to impoverished people that use state-provided insurance. These providers will say, sure, I'll jump on board. And now you have a network of providers that specifically use state insurance to help impoverished children and families. And this is very important. If you have a child support case, there's a reason for why you have that child support case. And most people believe it is to replenish welfare funds based off of if the mother gets food stamps and stuff like that. This is true, but it goes way deeper than that. So keep in mind that it's important to understand the full scope, regardless of your circumstance here. So this particular company is basically also known as being child support enforcement and child support disbursement unit, right? So you have these paternity acknowledge agreements that you've signed, and mom signed some documentation at the hospital. What happened here is that mom forfeited her rights to manage the financial medical care of the child without realizing it at the hospital level inside of their contracts. When she did that, they then gave dad this paternity acknowledgement agreement to sign, where he is now saying also he would rather they handle all of this stuff. So both parents are forfeiting their right to manage the child's health, well-being, and finances in regards to health and wellness. And we don't realize we're doing that when we sign up. Now, dad is afforded legal rights as a benefit, basically for conveying the child's rights to the state. This was an exchange, a valuable exchange. So as we convey the rights of the child to the state, we must receive something in consideration for value. That would be services, court services. By choice of law, we've entered into these agreements with them that we would go to their venue by choice of law if any dispute arises. Okay, and there's a lot of depth. I know that a lot of people may not understand this. I will put more effort into explaining this in deeper detail as we go along. But like I said today, the scope is just to give you a real general understanding of what this company does and how we got involved with it. If you have a good understanding of contract law, this is probably going to click for you real quick. If you are not really understanding contracts very well, this may be a little confusing, but hang in there. We're doing our best to bring this to you as much as humanly possible. It would take me hours upon hours to deliver every single tidbit, so it's going to have to be broken down into pieces. So what this is explaining to us here is that they also have control of the workforce development. Okay, everything is about development. I want you to keep that in mind for the future. So when you sign up with your employer, they also then keep track of the financial contributions you provide to the labor force. And as you can see here, it explains to you that you can't just be entitled to this assistance. It has to be earned through work participation and personal responsibility. That's a huge important statement in and of itself. So when we're involved with the Social Security network, a lot of that comes down to, like they're just talking here, is the labor force. We provide labor in exchange for valuable consideration, which is basically just your protection, like unemployment and things like that, and cash assistance. So because you've contributed, you are entitled now to benefit if anything goes wrong in your life, that they will support you in a certain way. This is a pattern of how the corporations work within the government. So that's why I want you to have a general understanding of it, because as we go deeper, it's going to become more clear. So in order to receive these entitlements, you have to be a participant. Okay, if you are not a participant, you would not be entitled, and neither would they. So as a participant in the Social Security system, that's only the very, very first step. Okay, this is not a federal Social Security issue. This is a state insurance issue. It's a supplemental insurance to the federal Social Security. Now, although you supply your Social Security mostly for identification purposes, what they do with that information thereafter is, all they really do is call Social Security to verify that you have a birth certificate on file with the Vital Statistics Department. That's the only play Social Security has throughout this entire process until state reimbursement time. So all that money in the Fed is held on reserve until the states can prove that they've done all the things necessary and properly to get the reimbursement money. It is reimbursement. It is reserve and reimbursement. So everything that begins with the state, and it is based on the state supplemental income. Okay, so through Maximus, what they've done here in gaining control of all these different Medicaid service providers, they've created sort of what do you call it, like a no way out situation, because really what they're involved in is the data trade business, right? So everything that you receive in entitlements is not given to you in good faith. You have to be able to demonstrate by your record that you are in fact entitled, and that kind of explains it right there when they're talking about the work participation and personal responsibility, right? Now flip it over to when we're dealing with family and children, and what they're talking about, dads, is financial personal responsibility. So the Child Support Enforcement Agency has no concern whether or not you are supporting your child. Their concern is that you demonstrate your financial responsibility in order to keep track of those payments. It has nothing to do with the amount, has nothing to do with the cash. What they're trying to do is keep record of whether or not you are financially demonstrating that responsibility. Because the moment you drop the ball and do not demonstrate your financial responsibility is the moment the state can make a ton of money on your family. So if you can't make those payments, you then are considered to be financially irresponsible, and therefore neglecting the child now becomes dependent, and because of that dependency, the child is now entitled to state-supplied disability insurance. So this is another issue we'll get deeper into, but I want you to have a general understanding of that. So whether it was to show of good faith or its impressive history of maximizing profits, it's impossible to say. But in 2004, Wisconsin once again contracted Maximus, this time as a revenue maximization consultant. The company was charged with helping the Department of Health Services prepare and file Medicaid claims to extract more money in federal reimbursement. The $3.4 million contract, footed by Wisconsin taxpayers, ran until 2009, and initially things seemed to be going fine. Perhaps the appropriation of $500,000 some years earlier was just a bad day in the office for Maximus. When the contract expired, DHS continued filing in accordance with the best practices development by the company. In 2013, these practices caught the eyes of the Inspector General for the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, who found that they did not comply with federal requirements. Out of $41 million claimed for residential care services between 2004 and 2006, $39 million was deemed unallowable by the federal government. That translates into $19 out of every 20, and the feds are demanding Wisconsin pay back $23 million. Chances are that this number will increase by magnitude when the claims made after 2006 get the fine-tooth comb treatment. W-2 and Medicaid consultancy are not the only services that have been outsourced to Maximus in Wisconsin. After spending more than $114,000 on lobbying the legislature on bills related to the W-2 budget allocation process, Maximus was awarded a renewed 6-year contract with the Wisconsin Department of Children and Families worth some $21 million in 2011. Once again, Maximus was charged with deciding whether cases, this time children placed in foster care, met the criteria for federal reimbursement. Indeed, Maximus had experience providing this type of service. In July 2007, Maximus paid $30 million to the federal government to settle criminal charges related to falsifying foster care claims. Even after Maximus was paid $30 million for false claims in the DC foster care system, Wisconsin went ahead and signed a contract with the firm for the same type of service. States are failing to learn from each other's experiences, or in Wisconsin's case, even their own. And Shabar Habibi, an expert on privatization at the Nonprofit Resource Center on Public Interest. But in some states, citizens are stepping up and speaking out. In neighboring Illinois, a Maximus outsourcing experiment came to a sudden halt December 2013. Facing a shortage of staff, the Department of Health Care and Family Services had contracted Maximus to deal with a backlog of Medicaid cases up for redetermination. An investigation of the redetermination data found that Maximus's work was sloppy and had high error rates, as opposed to the work carried out by the state employees. The case went to arbitration, and during the proceedings, a state employees union showed that Illinois could save $18 million by hiring more staff to make up for the shortfall, instead of using a contractor. The independent arbitrator issued an order canceling the $77 million contract with Maximus. So they went to arbitration to cover it up. Okay, this isn't going to be showing, this particular case won't show the public court forum there. They went there because that's private judging, and they wanted to make sure that it wasn't too revealing how this Maximus system works. Now, their contracts are far, vast, and wide. They contract, basically with the hospital, so they control all of the healthcare professionals that will serve you, and at the same time, incentivize those same professionals to give you these unconscionable contracts that lock you in unbeknownst to you. It's a vicious, vicious circle and an ugly hamster wheel to be on. And that's why we are really looking and digging deeply into this particular corporation, because they're the leading corporation that supplies pretty much every aspect of the services government provides. It's crazy how much they do. So they not only procure the professionals that will service you, including CPS, okay? CPS is a professional service provider that Maximus is going to be providing the workers and also assessing whether or not the workers' claims are legitimate. It's not good. And that's why we're finding ourselves in the position that we're in, because the same workers that they hire are the same workers that say, okay, this is a valid claim, let's put it through. Like, that's not going to work, obviously. I don't really need to explain that. So without having to show you too much, because it will take too much time, I will show you more in the future. But understand that these particular service providers, all of them, have the connection to Maximus. And the whole ordeal here with child support services is that mom, what she's really doing is forfeiting her right to manage the financial care of the child. So someone has to do it. That's why they don't want dad in the picture. That's why dad ends up signing the paternity acknowledgement agreement, because he's also trading off his right to manage the financial care of the child in exchange for legal rights to use the court system. It's all that contract really represents. It's not really much deeper than that, aside from behind the scenes once you really get in depth on what exactly they're trying to accomplish. So even if you have a traffic court case, this applies. That's the scariest part. It's in everything. Now, Maximus being a trust organization, how it really works is the trust itself opens up all these different organizations, or what we know as shell corporations. So from that trust, they will have a couple of nonprofits, and from the nonprofits, they will then open up a couple of profiting companies. The profiting companies then they transfer the money to the nonprofits as a pass-through corporation. So if I have a corporation that provides you with social service care, whatever I earn, a certain percentage of that is going to get donated to this nonprofit organization. Has a different name, has a different registry number, and all those things, but ultimately both of us have the same interest in funding the main trust. This is the principle, okay? And if you don't understand principle and agency, this is going to be something important for you to understand, because when these people are working to benefit the principle and they are not working to benefit the beneficiary, this is where we get them. So this is something, again, I'll get into details further, but right now the whole point of this is just to give you a full scope and understanding of who these people are and what they do. So here we have all these different social workers, right? What they do is they will assess your mental health and the mental health of the child behind the scenes through what is called an intake specialist. After they've made these observations and evaluations, they will report inside of the system to determine what kind of risk you are for causing future harm to the child. They also determine what kind of risk the child is for causing future harm to the economy. So if we abuse our kids, according to them, right, if there's something that we've done that has caused for what is called a serious emotional disturbance as defined in the DS5, if we've done something that caused for the serious emotional disturbance, it doesn't matter if we actually did, if the company caused a serious emotional disturbance for the children, either way you slice it, the child now is entitled to disability benefits from the state. So when CPS steps in and take your kids, you may not be guilty of anything. You may not be guilty of abuse or neglect. It becomes irrelevant because of the fact that the child has now experienced an event in his life that leads to a serious social disability. And so now he is looking like a golden nugget to the state, because now they can use that to get money. So in understanding that, understand also that the courts in and of themselves are a mental health provider. Okay, and I can show you that at a later time. I might even actually have a video about it already, I'm not sure. I know I posted it in some of the Facebook stuff, you might have seen it already. So because this court system is designed to service you, right? This is their job. They owe you a service because you have provided them the children's rights in exchange for those services. So they can't just not provide you a service. That's their job. That's what they're trying to do. And under the mental health evaluation that has occurred for both you and the children, by telling the court no, right, you are now impairing the contract. You are now in dishonor of said contract for refusal of services. So in the previous case I had worked on in CPS, we couldn't figure out, like, every time the mom completed services, they kept saying that it wasn't enough or that she didn't complete services. The whole purpose behind that is because when you don't complete services, it alleviates the agency of their obligation to you so that they can still get paid. That's why they do that. Now, for child support people, the gentlemen who are out there fighting against this whole system, and we're finding that you might not have the ability to pay, or what they do is they put these guys in jail and then say, okay, well, now you're in arrears, go back to jail. Like, this is insane, but this is why. Because when you have demonstrated your inability to pay, it also means that you have a dependency issue or a social mental health issue. Now you've become the dependent that needs services in order to help you correct your behavioral problem. So it's not that they're saying you're at fault, which is why you're not in a criminal setting, a setting for breach of contract. It's not your fault because you're ignorant is what they're saying. It's because you don't understand how detrimental it is to the child. So there's no intent for you to harm the child, you just don't get it. And they can't prove intent, so this was a great way around it. So now what we have is this circular logic where you can't get out of it, in the sense because both the child is dependent and entitled services, and now you're dependent and entitled services. And in order to correct that, we're going to give you correctional services, hence the Department of Correction. When you go to jail in the county, this is not considered punishment, mind you. This is considered correction. Two completely different things. You can only be punished if you've committed a crime with malicious intent, and they have to prove that intent before they apply punishment. So to get around that, instead of having to prove intent, they now have this disability. Well, you just didn't know better, but we can fix that by taking away your toys and doing these things to you like a mommy and daddy does. So a lot of people have a somewhat of an understanding of that, some have no understanding of that, some have a complete clear understanding of that. So this isn't intended to bore you to death if you already know these things. This is really, like I said, just supposed to be an overview to show you how it all intertwines and interconnects. So a minor, okay, can be an adult. So even when they say minor, as defined in certain statutes, it depends on which statute you're looking at. You got to use the ones that apply to the circumstance, right? So under mental health, a minor, as defined under state law and for the purpose of this subpart, includes a resident who has been declared legally incompetent by an applicable state court. That declaration is sometimes very difficult to see because the declaration is dependency or irresponsibility. So they don't come out and say, we declare you to be incompetent. They use different terms that lead to this incompetency. So dependency is a term, irresponsibility is a term. If you're in violation of the Financial Irresponsibility Act, it means you are legally incompetent. And I have a lot of detail that I can go through because it is vast and wide. Right? When you are deemed incompetent, it means that they cannot rely on you. Therefore, we must rely on the state to provide you with those corrections. So all of these different things in regards to medical health is what they're actually working on. That's what the Social Security plan is for. Facility means an entity that received assistance under the Title IV or Title IX of the Act and provided a community service assurance. That's everybody. So a facility is dang near everybody. If they received any of those funds and then also have a community service assurance, well, you're talking about the courts. You're talking about those nonprofits, those alliances, and everybody else under the sun. So mental health court professional means a member of the mental health court team, including but not limited to a judge, prosecutor, defense attorney, probation officer, coordinator, treatment provider, or peer recovery coach. So everybody in there is assessing your mental capacity. And behind the scenes, what they do is they enter their observations and evaluation into the system. And from there, a forensic auditor or a forensic examiner will go through those notes and basically diagnose you. And you never know it even happened. So this is really a lot of information. I really only wanted to give you an overview today. I hope that this has been some insightful information. I know, like I said, a lot of you guys have been studying really hard. A lot of people have a lot of information that I won't have. So somehow we might be able to put our minds together to put the pieces together so that we can provide remedy in a fast and meaningful way to people out there who, are really suffering. Some people are ready to go to jail. Some people are losing their kids. And I think that we have a really good way of going after this effectively now. So hopefully, if this makes sense to you, if it comes together, you'll be able to look a little bit deeper and come up with your own really good cases. But if this is still difficult to understand, like I said, I'll be doing some more videos to get in depth of all of this and what it means. And you can continue to participate if you'd like. If not, then that's up to you as well. If you have another way about going about things, then I'm good with that too. So any questions, just let me know. Anything you want me to go over in depth, then we'll go ahead and do that in the future as well. And until then, everybody have a great night. Let me know what else you'd like me to share in the future. Like the video and subscribe to it if you want to get future information that comes out. Hit the bell. I think you have to hit the bell if you want to be notified. So anybody who wants to hear in depth all these things, once you do that, I'm going to be putting out more videos. And in addition to that, if anyone's interested, like I said, I'm only one person. Jack is only one person. So if you are interested in helping others, if you're interested in combining efforts, if you have more information that might help us put puzzle pieces together more clearly, then that is so very, very appreciated. We could have like Zoom meetings and stuff and try to get this moving along a lot faster and help a lot more people. There is a remedy. So I'm not going to put the remedy on video. I'll tell you that right now. Not going to happen. I like to share it with everyone, but the problem with that is people will take it and misuse it or misapply it and ruin it for everyone else. So I'm not really going to get into details on public videos, but through the Zoom courses, we can talk more about it. It's just that, in my experience over the last couple of years, we have a lot of people that are overzealous. They don't really have a clear understanding of the big picture and the scope of what's happening behind the scenes. And they don't have a really clear understanding of what to do or how to, what is effective in what they're doing. And then they gather all these people and get them placed in jail or lose their kids forever. And I just don't have interest in working with anyone who acts impulsively that way. So it is my intent to prevent you from going to jail. It's my intent to prevent children from being removed, or if we can get them back into the loving arms of their parents, that would just be the most amazing thing ever. The reason I've concealed a lot of this information over the last year is because I was afraid if I hadn't released it, people would prematurely use it and do things that were more harmful than good. And I'm not saying that that's the intent of the user. I don't think that it's always a malicious thing. It's just that unintentionally, people can provide information or advice that leads to a much worse outcome. And I don't want to be that guy. So I waited to really give all this information to you guys until, number one, I was very certain that I was correct, and number two, I could prove it. I don't like to speak on things I can't prove. So I can show you everything that led me to this conclusion of how things work, but I can even show you in depth how it works from the inside out, front, back, beginning through the end. Maximus was the only missing piece to what I had already accomplished, so it was amazing that Jack found it. But again, I don't want to ruin any future remedy by prematurely and impulsively going after people in a belligerent way that might get them to fight back harder. Okay, we can do this with less belligerence, we can do this with less aggression if we put our minds together and work together as a people and help each other. So for those of you who have maybe more understanding of contract law, help those who don't. Explain to them how it works. And I'm like I said, I'm going to be trying to do as much as I can to help you guys with that. But I'm only one person again, and I only have so much time on my hands to put that information out. So I hope that this is somewhat clear. And if you want to participate, let me know. Everybody have a great night.
This FedGov Today program is sponsored by Maximus. On this edition of FedGov Today with Francis Rose, pressing the pause button on ChatGPT, driving research excellence with digital and data modernization, and sharing the work and the wins in the intelligence community. Welcome to FedGov Today with Francis Rose. The Energy Department has hit the pause button on using ChatGPT. FedScoop reports Energy is just one agency that's taking a broader look at how it uses generative artificial intelligence. Ann Duncan's the Chief Information Officer at Energy. Ann, welcome. It's great to talk to you. What's behind the pause on ChatGPT in particular, and what are you thinking about generative AI in general across the department?
Thanks, Francis. So the issue on ChatGPT and the pause is a little complicated because DOE is a complicated place. So at headquarters, we put a pause quite a while ago, actually. This is a bit of old news on ChatGPT, and we said we wanted to have a chance to look at that. Other parts of DOE, the plants, labs, sites, everyone took their own look at it and have set different rules about who can use it, who can't. In every case, we're making it available to people who have a business need to use the tool. But there's more to the story as well. We got a group from across DOE together, over 100 people, to talk about how we're going to use generative AI. So what's the big picture? Because we have at least two main uses for generative AI, right? We do research, it's a big part of our agenda, part of that involves AI. We also have to run our operations. We want to make sure people can use AI in the best way possible to support operations and to make DOE a better place and make it run better. So that group that got together of 100 people has worked on guidance for how in DOE we can use ChatGPT. What are the rules of the road for ChatGPT and other tools that will make us more successful in that space? Keeping in mind there are lots of different tools, and keeping in mind we have lots and lots of policy already in place. We don't need new policy, just some guide rails to help people. The other thing we're doing is we're setting up a sandbox within DOE. So the discovery zone is what we're calling it, and if you want to be able to understand how to use AI in a safe place, we're creating that space for people to do that.
One of the pieces that you and I have talked about many times in the past, Ann, is how all of these things that you're doing at an agency, whether it was when you were at EPA or now at Energy, fit together. And you called that recently, you wrote about the ever-expanding agenda and how all of these things fit together. What does that look like when I'm talking about AI, cybersecurity evolving into zero trust, data, and so on? Lots of things that you're managing. How does one go about keeping an enterprise view on all of those things rather than going this direction and this direction and this direction?
Well, that's a small question, Francis.
Yeah. We only have 10 minutes.
Yeah. So I think the point about that ever-expanding agenda is those things show up and they don't go away. So if you look just at the cybersecurity agenda, it builds upon itself. And occasionally you'll be able to say, okay, we've done this new thing and we don't need this one anymore. But otherwise, if you look at Zero Trust, IPv6, all the different activities around cybersecurity, just because we started doing CDM, for example, we didn't finish CDM, walk away from that and do the next thing. So we have to figure out how do we continue to implement all those programs, what's our highest priority now? When we look at priorities, it's not about compliance, it's about how to be more secure. So how do we reduce our risk? And then how can we comply within the framework of reducing our risk? And maybe something that 2 years ago was really important is less of a priority. At the same time, to your point, there's AI, there's big data, there's all these other things going on. Each of those brings opportunities for your organization, but it also brings new challenges, because every one of those new things that we get, the bad guys get it too. And so not only do we have to figure out how to use it, how to use it well for our organization, we have to keep our employees safe from other people who are using that same technology. So it's a matter of not taking our eye off any of those things and trying to figure out how to spread our resources over an ever-expanding group of activities without an ever-expanding pool of resources.
So that's exactly what I am getting at, though. How does one keep a broad enterprise strategy in mind with all of those pieces as components of that strategy rather than getting distracted by whatever the topic du jour is?
That's an excellent question. So I think part of it is having a good strategy and plan. So we've been working this year across DOE to make sure that we're all aligned, so that we're all working towards the same objectives. We have a strategy for my office, we have an operating plan, so we make sure that we don't forget any of those pieces, and that requires having a plan. It also requires making sure we're coordinating across all of DOE, and then it requires being able to respond when new things show up. Like quantum just shows up, AI just shows up, all those things show up, you have to adjust. But you have to go back to that plan, you have a long-term strategy, and then you have to be able to respond to that every year.
In addition to the things that show up, though, you have the things that have been there for time immemorial. You have legacy information technology, I imagine, that you're working through, technical debt like every agency and all of those things. Again, how does one throw those things into the mix and sort through all of them to establish priorities? Is there a matrix? Is there... What does that look like?
Yeah, so we have to understand what we have first, and that is a huge challenge in an organization as large as ours, is understanding all those systems that are out there, and each one of them needs to have a plan to move it to be modern. And so, yeah, it's a bunch of databases in some cases, it's a bunch of matrices, whatever it is that you have to put together to figure out what you're doing. So we have, for example, we're working through our organization to inventory for the federal part of DOE what our legacy systems are. We handle the non-federal part a little different, but what are our legacy systems and what are the plans for each of those systems to get modernized? A big one right now is we're going out and modernizing our HR solutions, and that's going to get us away from a bunch of the on-premise stuff. So not sure if I'm getting fully to your answer to your question, but it's basically figuring out what you have, and then to the greatest extent possible, making sure that more of that is being run through products that require less attention. Nothing is free, right? Just because I put something out in the cloud does not mean I get to walk away from it. But if I can buy someone else's product rather than build my own, then my responsibility for managing that is smaller. I don't have to worry about upgrading it. I still have to worry about ensuring that my part of that is secure, that my vendor's doing the right thing, that my data is well managed, et cetera. But so we're trying to minimize that footprint of responsibility for things, or maybe I shouldn't say responsibility, but the footprint of effort within our responsibilities, as well as understanding the whole scope of everything that's out there. And then you layer on all those requirements on top of that other people are kind enough to give us, that some of which help us a great deal, and some of which maybe don't. So.
Regarding modernization, you were, if I recall correctly, you were one of the first CIOs when you were at APA to talk about the fact that modernization is probably never going to be done. There, for years, there was an idea that we'll modernize the system and then we don't have to think about it for some period of time. Is that the approach that you're taking at Energy as far as modernization goes? This is a continuous cycle, and this is not something we stop and start at some future point?
Yeah, you've got a good memory, Francis. Thank you. So yes, one of the things that we try and do is not create the next legacy system. But to your point, modernization never ends. So we can make it easier in terms of going to the cloud, and not just in the cloud in the sense that we put our systems in the cloud, but that we're using a cloud service provider so that we don't have to worry about upgrades, right? They're going to do those upgrades. We still have to examine those upgrades, understand what they are, make sure they don't change our security posture, make sure they meet our users' needs. And ultimately, eventually, you have to look at whether you have the right products in your ecosystem. And that's where that continuous modernization goes on. At some point, you say, for example, I won't name the names, but there is a particular area of security where a lot of people are going from one vendor to another right now, because we've looked and we've said, this isn't really meeting everybody's needs, we need to move on to something else. So that's where you're going to be constantly modernizing, but hopefully what you don't have is that huge technical debt that goes along with it as you get away from having lots of custom-built on-premise products, and that's where we're trying to get to.
Is that a residual effect that maybe hasn't gotten as much attention as it should in the modernization discussion, that if one is continually modernizing it, you reach a point, I imagine, where you don't have a ton of legacy and you don't have the technical debt that agencies have accrued?
Eventually, I am sure we will get there, and it will be a good day when we do. And I think there's some departments and agencies that are getting there more quickly than we are, that are smaller. We got a lot of work to do still, but one of the few advantages we have at DOE is we don't have a lot of public-facing systems that we have to worry about modernizing, but we have lots of things that enable our employee success, lots of things that enable research that are still on-premise, or that are still things that we have built ourselves, or our vendor-provided solutions that are on-premise that we have to upgrade and manage ourselves. And all those things we want to move away from. Now, there will always be, particularly in the government where sometimes you are a customer base of one, right? There will always be IT systems that you have to build yourself. There are also, from our standpoint, we do research, right? We will always have research systems ourselves. We have the fastest supercomputer in the world right now. That is not something that we're going to give away and say, oh, we don't need that, right? We create new capabilities with our computing. We don't just create capacity. So we will always have our own stuff, but to the extent that the things where we don't need it, we can give it to somebody else to do for us, and we can manage that relationship and ensure it's secure. That's a much better place to be.
And Duncan, it's great to have you on the program. Thanks very much for joining me today.
Thanks, Francis. Great to be here.
You can read more about what Ann and her team are doing at Energy on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. Up next, driving research excellence with digital and data modernization. FedGov Today with Francis Rose. Be right back. Innovation in Government from DOTUS, presented by Carasoft, is available now on demand. This program showcases the intersection of technology and government, with insights from government and industry leaders on topics like AI, modernization efforts, secure data movement, and quantum computing. You'll learn from leaders from NGA, DIA, SOCOM, and lots more. To learn more and watch the show, visit innovationingov.com. Welcome back. Researchers across the federal government are using the IT infrastructure tools Ann Duncan talked about to make breakthroughs in energy, healthcare, and lots of other areas. Those tools will help researchers mitigate risks in their work, too. Raymond Holder is Vice President of Digital Growth at Maximus. Ray, welcome. It's great to see you again. What are some of the risks that those people, researchers in particular, are up against across the government, and how are those infrastructure tools helping them to get the job done?
Well, Francis, it's great to be here. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, so when you look at researchers, there are a host of things that they have to do. And it's like the trends of technology and all the risks and things are stacked up against them. So one of the first things they have to do is gather information and turn it into usable information that they can actually execute on. And so the studies have shown that 80% of a researcher's time is spent on just getting their arms around that data, but not even talking about transitioning to get it to be actionable and executing against that analysis. So that's one of the first things. And that's an area where technology can be an enabler, right? How you change that so that instead of just getting your arms around the data, you can actually use it as a strategic tool to help us create the future of energy.
Yeah. Data as a strategic asset is the terminology that the government has used and that the private sector organizations are using too. Is the way to get at that the tools themselves, or are people maybe thinking about it the wrong way and should be thinking mission first?
Well, it absolutely should be mission first. One of the things that I always tell people is that it's about making technology make a difference. And so one of our customers, consulting customers at the National Energy Transformation Lab, Technology Lab, EDX, they have done a phenomenal job of incrementally innovating, step by step, focused on what is going to make those researchers be more effective. And so over the last 10 years, they developed tools that have helped them analyze information, gather information, publish those findings, connect with researchers around the world. And that kind of progress and that kind of acceleration is what Energy is doing and what other agencies need to emulate.
I mentioned risk, and we talked about that a little bit before we went on the air, what the risks are for those people who are doing that work. What are they able to do to mitigate those risks themselves, the researchers, and what's up to the technology team that supports them, that works with them, collaborates with them to help them mitigate?
Sure. So there's a few things. One is, just from an enterprise perspective, you've got to create a secure, scalable infrastructure. If you've got thousands of researchers and there are thousands of people registered for the Energy Data Exchange, you've got to have a secure infrastructure that they can stand up the tools, they can use the tools, they can share the information in a way that you know is not going to leak, is going to make sure it's compliant with all the privacy regulations and rules. Those are things that as an enterprise you've got to do, and then you've got some training to do, right? It's only as good as the degree to which the people that are using it can actually benefit from it. And so it's kind of you look at it from both sides. One of them is from an enterprise, create that infrastructure with security baked in, and then on the other side, focusing on the users and the researchers and what they really need to do.
How do you measure success in an area like this, Ray? How does one know we're secure enough, we've mitigated risks enough? Because that whole risk management framework is challenging, I guess, to know we've stomped them all out. That's almost not the point. A lot of risk management experts tell me.
Sure. I mean, at some point, you're never going to be, quote, secure enough. Right. You can be a secure. It's like being healthy. You can't be healthy. You can be healthier, right? But it's not an end point. So the key that we've seen from people that have been most successful is continuous innovation, continuous integration, and continuous development. That's kind of the key. If you start small, you think big, and you incrementally improve. As long as you've got a secure infrastructure and you've got an environment that you can play and experiment with things, and you know nothing's going to leak, you know it's secure, it meets all the requirements, then then you're heading the right path.
It's like I talked about with Ann a moment ago. There's not really an endpoint, as she described about modernization. There's not really an endpoint to this either, it sounds like.
There isn't, and I encourage people, attack the status quo. I mean, if you're a sports fan, you kind of inherently know this, that if your team has its stars that are pushing 40 and the rest of the team is in their 20s, there's some inherent risk something might go wrong. There's a ton of risk in the status quo of these legacy systems, and people often overlook that because they're focused on the change and the risk associated with change. But attack that status quo, start small, and iteratively, incrementally iterate, and make sure you do it in a secure way.
Only about 20 seconds left, but
Sure.
There's more risk, a lot of times people say, in leaving things the way they are than there is in changing systems, right?
Yeah, there absolutely is. And if you look at the recent legislation, but the infrastructure bill, there are huge goals. Trying to be carbon net neutral by 2050. That's huge. And the only way you're going to get there is by making sure you're constantly moving forward, doing it securely, and attacking that status quo.
Ray, it's great to talk to you again. Thanks for your time today.
It's a pleasure to be here. I appreciate it.
You can read more about how researchers are leveraging digital tools on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. Up next, sharing the work and the wins in the intelligence community. FedGov Today with Francis Rose is back in a moment.
Here's Jeff Deal from F5 on innovation in government at DOTUS, brought to you by Carasoft.
The next innovation is around protecting a vulnerability or a risk for a customer. You can point to any number of open source vulnerabilities that have taken place in the sector in the last 3 to 5 years. Well, part of the challenge there is it's a shiny object syndrome. As soon as there is a open source vulnerability, the IT security sector is going to tell you every way that they can think of to solve that. So I think it's incumbent upon us to go and demonstrate to our government customers how we're efficiently or more efficiently or effectively addressing some of those issues, right? I think that's a big part.
For more, go to innovationingov.com.
Welcome back. More and more of the intelligence community's components are moving classified data and applications to the cloud. DIA CIO Doug Casa talked about that on last week's FedGov Today TV. You can watch that on demand at fedgovtoday.com. Leaders in Intel organizations say one benefit they're getting is more opportunity for collaboration. Linnea Jones is Chief Information Officer at the Central Intelligence Agency. At DOTUS 2023, she tells me that collaboration is nothing new.
The reality is we work together all the time because we all have enough more than work to do to work together on issues and concerns. And so the IC and the DoD frequently work together because for one, many of or a few of the DoD elements are also within the IC, namely your NSA, your DAA, your NGA, and others. But there's a lot of work we share working with, say, cloud service providers or working with vendors or many of the hundreds of companies that are here at DOTUS today. And so I want to emphasize that partnership because it really is a team sport and there's really a role for everyone. As we were talking beforehand, I think one of the key areas is, I have the pleasure and honor of being the CIA-CIO, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention my partners internally at CIA that help to make the mission possible. Within CIA, we have Ms. Jennifer Link, who is our new incoming CISO, the Chief Information Security Officer. So very proud to serve alongside she, as well as Mr. Hurley Blankenship, who is our Chief Data Officer for CIA, all the acronyms, right? And so it's really a partnership. Sometimes people used to say the digital C-suite, and so there probably isn't an issue, a concern, or topic that we aren't working together. And I think that just cascades across the community, across the agency. When we were speaking beforehand, another key topic that I don't think anyone in the tech community can make it through the year without saying AI. AI this, AI that, it's everywhere, right? And across CIA, similarly, we kind of did a little bit of a transformation in that we have collapsed and consolidated all of our AI efforts and set up an AI office, and it's led by Ms. Lakshmi Raman, and huge advocate and partner, just doing phenomenal work, looking at how we can bring together large language models to integrate data and information, to be able to really use those capabilities to help produce intelligence. And so that's one of the key partnerships. And I think, again, the vendor community, we couldn't be more proud to serve alongside with the cloud service providers. They're bringing, amazing capabilities on various networks and platforms, from not just the classified domain, which we primarily work on, but at the unclassified and secret level. So very much looking forward to that and the partnerships, and just more excited about what we will accomplish in the future.
You can't spell CIA without AI. So
Look at that.
it would seem logical that you're working in that realm.
Absolutely.
How are you setting your priorities out for 2024? I imagine this is the time of year that you're thinking, what do I want to accomplish? What do I want my team to accomplish? Where do we want to be in the coming year?
Yeah, so you bring up a great point, and really increasing bringing capabilities, service, and service offerings, moving up the stack, right? So we did a lot of work with infrastructure as a service, but now we're moving on to platform as a service, software as a service, and really looking at how can we do the integrated capabilities to make those programs and projects and services available. So a lot in the applications world, whereas where AI comes to bear in that. In addition to that, I think we talk about the partnerships, but one of the key beauties is that healthy competition, right? We all have a lot of technology advances, but I think the true beauty is to be able to blend capabilities and solutions, so that way we can really be able to choose based off of the mission, the need, even the turnaround time as to what we want to offer, right? So I would say for the next year, we're looking at a lot more integration and agility. We don't want to be pigeonholed or stuck to just one solution. We really want to be able to use multiple, and I think that's very important in the tech sphere as fast as it progresses. One of the key areas that we will continue to echo and just really push forward is cybersecurity, right? So that'll always be key in the intelligence community, as we say. But I think where we're at now is more of a mature area than we were before. Now with the zero trust architectures and looking at least privilege and being able to really multi-factor and pivot to make use of those technologies, I think that's some of the key areas that will continue to progress. And so for the future, those will kind of be some of the big ones. Underneath all of this, of course, is the data, conditioning the data, understanding the data. We are producing enormous amounts of data, and we know that will just continue to echo and grow. We can't approach the problem in the same way now that we did years before, because we'll get consumed by the answer because there's just so much data. So it's more of looking at how can we use these solutions in order to focus on the niche areas, the information, and curate the data that we need, as opposed to looking at everything all the time, because that's just not possible.
Doug Casa, the CIO at DIA, see, I'm having a letter issue too.
I gave you the same problem.
You passed it along, thanks. Was here earlier and talked about some of the things that they're doing and that they're offering to their partners across the intelligence community. What does that look like from your perspective? Not specifically what DIA is doing for you necessarily, but how you're working with the other elements of the IC. Yeah,
so that's a great question. A lot of people may not realize, but we within the Central Intelligence Agency do have the pleasure and honor of providing quite a few capabilities and services to the intelligence community on behalf of the DNI in partnership, right? And so very humbled that we have delegated authorities provide quite a few services of common concerns that we would say are SOCs, one of them being the Commercial Cloud Enterprise, or C2E contract, right? And so that's one of our largest, but please, I always like to share that that's just one of them. There are many other SOCs that we also work in partnership with the community, such as Identity Credential Access Management, ICAM. CI plays a huge role in that, and data services, conditioning data services, providing open source data service layers, all of that. And so there's quite a few, but those are some of our big ones. But we'll continue on as long as they continue to entrust us. We will continue to stand front and center and proud to do that for the community.
With ICAM being as important an element as it is of the zero trust architecture and of the effort that the IC is undertaking along with the rest of the federal government, what does that mean for the way that you interact with other organizations? I imagine that really puts you in a pivotal role for helping not just CIA with zero trust, but everybody across the community. Yeah.
I think that's a great example. ICAM is one of those services of common concern that we actually, although we are leading for the role, we work in conjunction with the National Security Agency and the National Geospatial Agency, right? So Geospatial Intelligence Agency. We got to make sure we have the intelligence in there, right? And so Mark Shadland at NGA and now Scott Fear at NSA, we're all together working on that and really being complementary in what we're providing, right? So NSA, not surprising, a huge background in encryption and PKI and those aspects. NGA, fascinating, just amazing mapping capabilities and partnerships across the DoD, providing that multi-fabric layer. And so we all kind of bring that together in order to provide an overall enriched intelligence format and form. But I think when you look at ICAM, sometimes you look at it as like one piece of this, one piece of that. But our goal is to be complementary, so we're not duplicating effort, but really focusing on the areas, the things that we do best, and then bringing it together to work together. And I think us at CIA, we have a huge long-standing background in open source intelligence. That's really how CIA was founded during wartime. I spoke earlier, we just turned 75 last year, so 75 years young, and so we had a birthday last year. But we always will go back to those OSINT roots of how we came about. And I think, of course, human, right? Human intelligence. And so very proud of the work that we have done and the partnerships that we have created and the ones we'll continue to foster for the future.
You can read more about collaboration in the intelligence community on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. FedGov Today with Francis Rose continues in a moment.
Innovation in Government from DOTUS, presented by Carasoft, is available now on demand. This program showcases the intersection of technology and government, with insights from government and industry leaders on topics like AI, modernization efforts, secure data movement, and quantum computing. You'll learn from leaders from NGA, DIA, SOCOM, and lots more. To learn more and watch the show, visit innovationingov.com.
Welcome back in today's event spotlight. West 2024 is coming from AFCEA International and the U.S. Naval Institute. West is back at the San Diego Convention Center February 13th through 15th. This year's edition has a great lineup of sea service speakers, the largest exhibit floor in West history, lots of special events and networking, and a lot more. You can read more and sign up at fedgovtoday.com/events. FedGov Today TV returns next Sunday morning at 10:30. I'm Francis Rose. I'll see you then. Thanks very much for watching. Have a great week.